Please purchase a personal license to remove this message. Ayurveda revival of the Muslim world in the 6th century, when the world was hovering between life and death and there was no one to whom man could look for help, the advent of Prophet Muhammad F. Jij, gave humanity a fresh lease of life. He placed human welfare under the care of a community that was in possession of the revealed word and the divine law, and in the light of these did everything that was the symbol of purity and justice. This community was blessed with the most harmoniously blended disposition and temperate outlook, and had risen to the position of the trusteeship of mankind after going through rigorous moral training and attaining complete spiritual adjustment. The emergence of this community marked a turning point in human history. It immediately arrested the progress of mankind towards its doom and made it safe, for centuries to come, from the moral and material hazards that were threatening to engulf it. Under its guidance, humanity made a well-balanced advance towards its true goal. The various capabilities of man were called splendidly into play, and an environment was created in which it was made possible for him to advance to the highest goal of progress in the shortest and the surest way. Under the influence of this new community, the lives of men, their minds, and their moral were revolutionized. Unbelief and depravity of character were replaced by faith and virtuousness. False ethical values and wrong ideals gave way to high moral patterns. Politics was placed. Revival left the Muslim world 175 under the control of ethics. In the system of Islamic civilization there was unremitting care for spiritual as well as material prosperity. Economic development was matched with moral advancement. Political expansion corresponded with spiritual development. A deep, inner unity of faith, an unswerving oneness of purpose, and peace, and fellow feeling had demolished all barriers between man and man in the world of Islam, and made it into a society which, in spite of it being composed of diverse racial elements, was blissfully free from all social inhibitions, tensions, and prejudice. The path of virtue that had been deserted for so long and had become so difficult to tread was now a smooth, even road on which people could walk in perfect freedom and security. Man's right to worship and obey God was restored. The call of religion developed great vigor that lifted millions of men from the depth of degradation to the greatest heights of glory. The spirit of man was aroused, and his genius was set to a noble purpose. In short, the caravan of humanity was brought nearer to its destination, and its vanguard did, indeed, arrive. But before the rest of the travelers could arrive at the journey's end, the caravan suddenly stopped and its leadership underwent change. The old leader had to relinquish charge because he had not made adequate arrangements for the safety of the travelers. An unknown fellow traveler assumed the reins of leadership at the point of the dagger and proceeded to take the caravan along a path that was tortuous and uneven, and over which nocturnal darkness prevailed even at high noon. He is engaged still in the same mad pursuit. The travelers stumble and fall headlong and groan, but the leader, in his arrogance and haste, presses heedlessly on. Western nations, this, surely, is no figment of the imagination, for the Western nations, which succeeded the Muslims to the stewardship of the world, had, from the very beginning, been laboring under a serious disadvantage. They were never in possession of an unpolluted source of revealed knowledge or an uncorrupted fund of divine wisdom. The 176 ISI.M and the world insignificant part of the teachings of Jesus Christ that had reached them had become lost owing to distortions and interpolations. Western nations tried to make up for the light of heavenly guidance with the learning of the Greeks and the Romans, and the entire pagan legacy of ancient Greece and Rome had fallen to their lot. They had received the worship of the perceptible, devotion to pleasure, local patriotism, and libertinism from the Greeks, and the bankruptcy of religious belief, racial pride, power worship and imperialism from the Romans. We have seen how what was left of the religious teachings of Jesus Christ was devoured by Roman paganism. What remained was lost in the dogmatic quarrels of the clergy. This was followed by the epidemic of monasticism, and then, in reaction, the Christian world became immersed in sensual enjoyment. The depravity and luxury of the clergy produced, in the European mind, a pronounced revulsion towards Christianity which was replaced in unthinking minds by religion in general. In the Middle Ages there occurred a bitter conflict between the Church and the State, which was succeeded by an even more violent clash between Christianity and science. The ghastly atrocities committed by the Church officials during the course of its struggle sealed the fate of Christianity in the West, and succeeded in creating a distrust of religion in general. Western intellectuals did the rest. They broke the remaining link with transcendental ethics. As a result, the West turned to materialism, and power and wealth became the sole objects of its worship. A further outcome of the peculiar development of the West was the growth of aggressive nationalism. For the preservation of national existence it became necessary to bear ill will towards the rest of humanity. Europe, on the one hand, decided that the whole of the East was an opposite camp, and on the other, it divided itself into a number of watertight compartments on the illusory basis of national self-determination. The world was converted into a huge marketplace for the sale and purchase of the weaker nations. The coupling of moral and religious depravity with phenomenal progress in the scientific and industrial fields led to the creation of a revival of the one Muslim world. 177 Striking disparity between power and ethics. Men learned to fly in the air like birds and to swim in the nadir like fish, but they forgot how to walk straight on the earth. Undisciplined knowledge and unenlightened wisdom furnished every highwayman with a sword. Deadly weapons were placed in untrained hands which repeatedly plunged the world into horrible bloodbaths. And now science has given the atomic and hydrogen bombs to humanity as weapons for suicide. Under the influence of these godless nations the sciences relating to inanimate matter made great progress while human material was brought low in every respect. Religion was ostracized and secularized, moral enthusiasm was crushed under the weight of material cravings. The religious instinct of Eastern peoples, too, which was the pivot of their lives, was seriously impaired. The universal sway of materialism. It is a tragic fact of modern life that there exists no community worth naming in Europe, Asia, Africa, or America which is genuinely opposed to the pagan philosophy of materialism. Nations like the Germans in Europe, the emerging independent states of the FMI Soviet Union, and the Japanese or Indians in Asia, are all becoming increasingly convinced of the merits of materialism. The ideological differences that one encounters in the modern world are merely the offshoots of an all-out struggle for political supremacy. They have no relation to moral or spiritual convictions. It is simply too much for the pride of a powerful nation that another should be in command of the international scene. No nation feels inclined to address itself to the moral regeneration of humanity should the opportunity ever arise. Eastern nations are by no means rejecting materialism and secularization. The same urges and ambitions that rule over the West are enshrined in their hearts, too. Their leaders have only one quarrel with the West: they do not want their nations to be exploited by Western nations. They now aspire to be their own masters. Apart from 178 Islam and the world, there is no fundamental difference in the mental attitudes of Eastern and Western nations. What the people of the East are opposed to is that the Islam ideas and ideals should be brought to their lands by Westerners. They want to be left free to do it themselves. They do not wish to give up the ideals of Islam civilization. They only desire that they themselves should be the torchbearers of that civilization. Further, many Eastern communities have their own traditions of paganism, together with which they are becoming imbued with the pagan attitudes of the West. The new allies of paganism. What is so regrettable is that the traditional enemy of paganism, the Muslim, has become its ally in many parts of the world. What better proof of the universal triumph of paganism can there be than that Muslims should regard those countries as their friends and well-wishers who are the leaders of the pagan movement in the present age? The modern Muslim has totally given up the idea of leadership, he has LMT faith in himself. His whole mental attitude is being molded by the undercurrents of paganism. Muslim states are exhibiting the same materialistic tendencies which are the hallmark of the Western social system. The same enslavement to earthly longings is fast becoming the creed of the community, the cornerstone of whose religious faith is the idea that the real life is the life to come. These nations' love for the afterlife is declining day by day. They are subordinating ethical principles to material expediency with astonishingly cheerful readiness. In some respects Muslims are actually outdoing some Western nations in the glorification of material wealth. A ray of hope with the solitary exception of the followers of Islam, in which alone one sees a ray of hope. All the communities in the world have lost touch with their heritage of divine guidance. The light of the prophetic teachings has departed from their hearts. The passage of time has severed their connections with the real origins of their spiritual revival of the Muslim world. 179 Inspiration. Past experience of religious reform movements among the various nations precludes the possibility of a fundamental change being brought about in their outlook by bringing religion into their lives. Their primary ideals are rigidly opposed to a religious conception of life. Against this backdrop, the entire spiritual inheritance of the Muslims is preserved in its pristine purity. A full record of the life and traditions of the Holy Prophet and of the lives of his companions, which holds the key to the understanding of the memorable rise of Islam, is still available in its original form. Moreover, a chain of religious reformers has been continually operating among Muslims, sustaining their spirits, nourishing their souls and guarding them against a relapse into ignorance. The Muslim mind, by the very nature of its ordering, is such that it can never be made to imbibe pagan materialism unless, of course, its very structure is destroyed and recast in a new form. The standard bearers of faith. In an earlier chapter it was pointed out that the Holy Prophet said of Muslims in the Battle of Badr, "O God, if these believers are destroyed, no one will be left on the earth to worship thee." This is equally TME today because, if anyone can challenge paganism and offer to the world an alternative plan of life, it is the Muslims. The plan of Islam is an eternal plan. It will remain valid for all time to come. By virtue of their religion, Muslims are the moral guardians of mankind and they will return to their duty when they wake up. That day will be a day of reckoning for the nations of the world. Muslims possess a spark which, if and when it is ignited, will burn down the whole structure of ignorance. Allama Iqbal used the medium of the presiding genius of the order of ignorance, the devil himself, to express this in his poem The Advisory Council F. The Devil, 1936. The evil spirits of the world are shown in the poem to have gathered together to ponder over the new challenges that are threatening their nefarious system. One advisor mentions Ayati Islam and the world democracy as the latest evil of the new world. Another mentions communism. Says the great poet, such an awe this budding menace has struck, that the brooks, the hills, and the yonder mountains shake. The world, my lord, is about to crumble. The world that depends upon thy guidance alone. The devil allays their fears and explains the plans he has devised for meeting those threats. Then he speaks of what, in his opinion, is the real menace and says that though he has thought out the most appropriate campaign against it, too, its potentialities are so terrifying that he is constantly brooding over it. He goes on to say, if any fear attends me, it is from the people whose ashes yet the spark of desire contain. Occasionally still, I see among them men who, with tears, perform the Wu-ia in the early morn. He who knows the secrets of history knows that communism is not Mao's menace, but Islam. That they from the Quran have departed, I know. And capitalism is now the faith of the believer. In the pitch dark night that upon the east has fallen, the wise men of the J. Yaram 241 arc without the light of faith. but from the exigencies of this age I fear the law of the prophet may reappear. Beware of the law of the prophet, 100 times beware. The safeguarder of woman's honor, the tester of men, the maker of men, the voice of death for all forms of slavery. There is no distinction of the ruler and the ruled in its domain. Rav 11 al.f. The Muslim referral purges wealth of foulness I and the rich the trustees of their goods it makes. Can a more radical thing than this there be, that the earth belongs to God, not to the kings? The more this law from the world's view is hidden the better. Luckily, the Muslim himself is devoid of finth. Let him in meticulous interpretations of the book his energies waste. And a helpless groper in the gloom of theology be. Satan then gives the following advice to his council, whose mighty takburs the spell of time and space can break, may his night of decay no day break see. You keep him a stranger to the world of deed, I say, that all his movements on the life's chessboard be frustrated. For him such poetry and mysticism are, indeed, the best, which from his eyes life's broad spectacle conceal. Every moment do I at the thought of their awakening tremble, the real purpose of whose faith is the supervision of the universe. The message of faith. The world of Islam can still give the message of faith and life to disillusioned humanity. It is the message the Holy Prophet imparted to humanity 400 years ago. It is a simple, dynamic, radiant message, a grander and more majestic message than anything the world could hope to receive. It is the same message which prompted the Muslims of Madinah to leave their homes and spread throughout the world. It is the same L82 Slam and the world Renaissance which was so exquisitely summed up by a spokesman of the Muslims before the Emperor of Iran, who had asked the followers of Islam as to what had brought them to his land. We have been sent by Allah to deliver Horn he pleaseth from the overlordship of his slaves to his overlordship, and from the narrowness of this world to the boundlessness of the hereafter, and from the oppressed hen of other religions to the equity and fairness of Loslarn. Not one word of this message can be altered even today, more so many years after it was first delivered. It is just as capable of moving the minds and filling the hearts of men in the 2th century as it was in the 6th. Today, too, humanity prostrates before false deities, sculptured and unsculptured. The worship of one transcendent God is becoming rare. The animal in man has been let loose, and the priests, the rulers, the capitalists, and the political leaders have lifted them, dves to the dizzy heights of godhood. The world with all its vastness has become more constricted, murky and suffocating today than ever before. Being the devotee of material power, the man of today refuses to admit the existence of any other PMTL. He has been captivated by his own material achievements. He finds himself deceived and frustrated, and is growing increasingly petty, exclusive, selfish and skeptical. Everyone believes that he alone has the right to live, regardless of other people. Politicians and national leaders have made life still more narrow and difficult by erecting artificial barriers in society. They have laid hold of the wells of life, and bound up the structures of economic and political forms with the wishes and necessities of the privileged classes. Lands which, in the past, were renowned for their richness and fertility have been rendered barren. Entire populations have been placed, like helpless children, under the trusteeship of aliens. The MMKM way of life is constantly formed new fetters for the spirit of man. The levies and imposts are growing heavier by day. Peace is assailed from all sides, and mental stress, dissension, riots and strikes have become the inevitable constituents of daily existence. One level of the one, is learn world 83 today, again, it is necessary to deliver men from the oppression of other religions to the equity and fairness of Islam. Even in the 20th century there are religions abounding in superstitious beliefs and fantastic teachings that tyrannize their followers and drive them like deaf and dumb animals. Then there are the new political and economic religions such as collectivism, nationalism, and socialism that are a step ahead of the ancient pagan faiths in fanatical intolerance and coercion. The last two world wars were the defiance of these very dogmas to humanity, besides which the bloodthirsty religious strife of ancient Rome and the bitter conflicts between the Church and the intelligentsia of Europe in the Middle Ages recede into insignificance. Today, too, the message of Islam is an open invitation to the worship of, and surrender to, one God and belief in the mission of the prophets, particularly that of Prophet Muhammad, and in the resurrection and final judgment. In return for submitting to this call, the world will emerge from the darkness of ignorance and the spirit of man will be set free. Man will rediscover his equilibrium, and from the narrow confines of the world of matter he will come out into a world which, although enclosed within himself, stretches beyond time and space. There has never been a clearer appreciation of the need and the utility of this message as there is now. The civilization of Florence has been publicly disgraced. Its shame is being flagrantly exposed. People are disgusted with life, they despair of their intellectual and cultural leaders. Modern civilization is seriously ill. From all indications, the psychological moment has arrived when a radical change in the leadership of human affairs is necessary. So far, changes in leadership have only been in the nature of a change of personnel. There has been no major shift in thought. The only thing that can cure the world of its present ills is that its leadership should pass from the hand of those who worship materialism to the hands of those who worship the one God. For Islam and the world renaissance of faith to attain this objective, the world of Islam will have to rediscover its spiritual roots. It will have to rededicate itself to Islam. There is absolutely no need for a new religion, a new canonical law, or a new set of moral teachings. Like the sun, Islam was, is, and will be timeless. The mission of Prophet Muhammad is endowed with the quality of timelessness. No other messenger of God is to be raised now. His religion is everlasting, his teachings are immortal. But the Muslims do require a renaissance of faith. One cannot face new hazards and meet new challenges with a weak faith and unauthorized practice. A decaying building cannot withstand a flood. One must have a living, glowing and firm faith in the cause one seeks to uphold. If the Islamic world aspires to inject new life into humanity, to give it the courage to resist and reverse the torrents of materialism and religious disbelief, it will first have to produce that enthusiasm and life in itself. The Muslims will have to regenerate themselves internally. They cannot brave the onslaught of the ungodly West by imitating its empty cultural forms, customs and social concepts, for these have no place in the growth and rise of nations. All cultural imitations are bound to make a people small. The Muslims can exert themselves only by means of that inner force, regarding which the West is becoming increasingly worried. The secret of a Muslim's strength lies in his faith in the divine recompense and reward in the afterlife. If the Muslim world, too, establishes the same worldly ideals and gets caught in the same web of material desires as the West, the latter, with its larger fund of material knowledge and power, has a prior claim to superiority. History speaks of times when Muslims grew indifferent to the value of the inner force and the wells of spiritual vigor within them dried up owing to disuse. Then occasions arose calling for great feats of faith, and the Muslims tried to draw upon that force, but to their dismay they learnt that it had deserted them long ago. It then dawned upon them that they had done themselves a great injury by neglecting it, and they made frantic efforts to induce it artificially, but this proved futile. Revival of the Muslim world 185. During such times there also occurred events in the course of which the honor of Islam seemed to be at stake, and it was hoped that the entire Muslim world would be set ablaze with fury and Muslims would rush forth from every quarter to defend their sacred rights, but nothing happened beyond a ripple here and a wave there. Under the surface everything remained motionless and dead. The major task before the Muslim leaders and thinkers today is to rekindle the flame of faith in the hearts of Muslims. They should do all that the early preachers of Islam did, and at the same time avail themselves fully of all the opportunities the modern age has put into their hands. The Quran and the Sunnah can still revitalize the withered arteries of the Islamic world. Their study and influence still fire one with the desire to smash the citadel of ignorance. They have a rousing quality about them that can spur a slumbering people into new life. Under their inspiration, mighty struggles can once again ensue between belief and unbelief, faith and treachery, heart and intellect. The world can once again be made to rouse itself to the battle between the tranquility of the mind and ease of the body, a battle which all the prophets had to wage, and without which no vital change in the moral makeup of men can be brought about. There will then be born in every Muslim home good men who will fully correspond to the description contained in the following verses of the Holy Quran. We were youths who inclined in their Lord, and we advanced them in guidance. We gave strength to their hearts. Behold, they stood up and said, Our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and of the earth, ne'er shall we call upon any God other than him. If we did, we show 11d indeed how uttered an enormity. Al-Kahf 18:13-14. The world will then again see living specimens of the religious earnestness and sacrificial spirit of Bilal and Amr, Kebab and Kubayb, Suhaib and Musab ibn Umair and Uthman ibn Mazun and 186 isi.m and the world Anas ibn an-Nakr. The gentle breeze of faith will once again kiss the face of the earth and a new world quite different from the one we know v1j come into existence. Today, Muslim society is a victim of complacency and compromise with prevailing circumstances. The perils which are so relentlessly closing in from all sides leave it unmoved. It is drifting and it does not know to what end. Its heart is without the warmth of desire. There is a dire need to disturb the complacency of this community of the faithful. It must be persuaded to care for human welfare more than its own interests. Maturity of outlook. No matter how well provided with material resource a nation may be, it cannot hope to go far in the world without maturity of thought. In such a predicament it will always be playing into the hands of adventurers and exploiters. Unfortunately, the followers of Islam cannot distinguish between good and bad and will just as happily place their trust in a foe as in a friend. Often, indeed, it turns out to be easier for their enemies to win their confidence than for their well-wishers to do so. The Holy Prophet once said, "A Muslim is not bitten twice from the same hole." 242. Now it is just the reverse. The political awakening among Muslims is almost nil. They are constantly acting so as to invite foreigners and their MVN selfish leaders to exploit them. Conversely, Western nations are characterized by a keen political awareness. No one can easily misguide them and they choose their leaders with care. However glorious a leader's record might be, if they feel that he has done all he can, a new man is called for, and he will be replaced without hesitation. This is why these nations are, on the whole, safe from the machination of manipulative politicians, and that IRMLCRS know that enlightened public is dishonest cadres difficult to deceive. The Muslim world cannot afford to lose time in catching up with the West in inculcating proper consciousness among its masses and revival of the Muslim world. 187 Educating them in the responsibilities of good citizenship. It goes without saying that mere education is no proof of consciousness in a community, though it is a necessary condition thereof. Deliberate and systematic steps will have to be taken in this direction. It is for a Muslim leadership to realize that people who cannot do their own thinking cannot constitute a reliable people, however much enthusiasm they may show for a cause. There is no stability in their thoughts and emotions. They have a weakness for clever words. They are prone to think with their heart rather than with their head. Any slogan can lure them away, any charmer can fool them. In spite of being a revealed religion, having its roots in divine revelation and the Holy Prophet's mission, Islam worked out a typical consciousness among its people, a consciousness that was deeper, stronger, and wider than what we mean by it today. It developed a frame of mind that was anti-pagan and an understanding which, with all its breadth and flexibility, could not for a moment accommodate beliefs and notions which were inconsistent with its own basic pattern. Take, for example, the following incident. Owing to the teachings of the Prophet, it was fixed firmly in the minds of the companions that injustice was an evil which was not to be permitted in any circumstance. They had given up their ancient family and tribal predilections, believing that there was no place for such things in Islam. Then one day they heard the Prophet say, "Stand by your brother, be he the aggressor or the aggrieved." 243 Had there been the slightest weakness in the development of their new understanding, they would have readily accepted the command in its apparent meaning, firstly, because of the background of their native traditions and, secondly, because they believed as a matter of faith that what the Holy Prophet said was not from his own understanding but from divine inspiration. Their loyalty to the Prophet was unmatched. Yet, they could not resist speaking out, "Helping the aggrieved is all right, Prophet of God, but how can one help the aggressor?" The Prophet explained that the way to help the aggressor was to restrain him from committing aggression. This gave them a new understanding. But until 188 Islam and the world they had heard it, they were not disposed to accept even the advice of the Prophet in spite of their implicit faith in him. This was because Islam had taught them to exercise their judgment and they learned how to use it. Similarly, the Prophet once dispatched an army under the command of a companion and enjoined on it to remain obedient to its commander. On the way the commander became upset with his men and had kindled a large fire. He ordered the soldiers to march into the fire. The soldiers refused. They said that they had embraced Islam to save themselves from fire and not to march into it. 244 When the incident was reported to the Prophet, he commended the action of the soldiers and said that had they stepped into the fire, they would never have come out of it, meaning that they would have gone straight to hell. The companions did not hesitate to challenge even the Caliph publicly if they suspected him to be guilty of a wrong act. Once, as the mighty Caliph Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, arose to address a gathering, he was cut short by Salman al-Farisi, may Allah be pleased with him, who said that he would neither listen to, nor obey the Caliph unless he explained how he happened to be wearing a garment made of 2 pieces of cloth while to others he had allotted only 1 piece each. Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, advised him to be patient, and then he called upon his son, Abdullah. At first there was no response. Umar called again, "O Abdullah, the son of Umar." This time Abdullah got up. Umar said to him, "Tell them whether the L124s I am wearing is my own or one borrowed from you." Abdullah affirmed that it was his Abdullah's and that he had only lent it to his father for use. On hearing this, Salman said, "Proceed, Amir ul-Mu'minin, we will now listen to you." 246 This powerful awakening proved to be the strongest obstacle against the imperialistic ambitions of the Umayyads. It was not until the entire generation that had been brought up under the influence of the Prophet had passed away that the Umayyads could breathe a sigh of relief. Revival of the Muslim world. 89 Intellectual core. Every movement has an intellectual background. No revolution can succeed unless the minds of the people have been prepared. A study of the French Revolution will show how irresistible the masses can become once their minds are amused. The French Revolution was not the outcome of a sudden impulse. Its leaders had patiently prepared the minds of Frenchmen much in advance. There was an army of intellectuals who had given meaningful content to the popular urges that ultimately found expression in the 3-word slogan of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Though its leaders were not able to make the revolution beneficial for humanity, it proved to be a mighty force in human history because it sprang from the minds of the people. That the West is still alive and powerful, is due to the keen political consciousness and the civic sense of its people. One hears rarely of Mayon in the West violating his allegiance to his country or subordinating national interests to personal considerations. Leaders in Muslim countries, on the other hand, though they mortgage destiny of their people, yet people will still swell their ranks and dance to their tunes. In a number of Muslim countries conditions are extremely deplorable. The common man leads a subhuman existence, the authority of God is brazenly violated and all sorts of shameful acts are committed, and yet this arouses neither pain nor indignation among Muslims. This is so because the process of thinking among Muslims is stagnant and their social consciousness almost dead. It is essential for the revival of Islam that conscious efforts are made for the development of an enlightened and responsible public opinion in Muslim countries. Without it, all manifestations of religious enthusiasm or political fervor will be merely superficial and of no significance. No place for selfishness. The Arabian Nights tells the story of an age when the state or the empire was the lengthened shadow of one man, the king or the caliph, who held sway over society, a huge tree that sends out enormous 190 Islam, and the world branches in all directions and robs the tiny plants growing under it of sunshine and air. The wheels of the nation's life moved for him alone did the farn one till the soil. The traders ply their trade and the workmen use their tools, for him alone did the authors write, the poets sing, the soldiers march, the mothers give birth, the earth open up its bowels and the seas give up their treasures. This book exerted enormous influence on Muslim social organization from Baghdad to Cairo and Damascus. The stories of the Arabian Nights and the literary masterpieces of the Book of A. Hinf are living proof of the strength of this influence. But, for all that, the spirit of this age was diametrically opposed to the spirit of Islamic civilization. Islam brought the structure of such a civilization down to earth. The Holy Prophet dubbed it the age of ignorance and foretold the end of the reign of all imperial rulers. This age has now forfeited its right to continue. The very idea of such an age is revolting to our minds. Who in the current context of things would like a state or society to exist in which a few individuals were permanently sick with indigestion due to overeating, while the rest were permanently in the throes of death due to starvation? Such a situation is unnatural and unjust. It should not have been tolerated even for a day. If it flourished in the past, it was because Islam had not yet acquired enough strength to expose its hypocrisy. As the Islamic movement spread and people learned to distinguish clearly between right and wrong, they progressively emerged. The age of the Arabian Nights has quit the stage of history forever. Islam can have nothing to do with egotism or self-conceit, individual or collective. Whether these sentiments take the form of family or sectarian pride, as in Eastern and Islamic countries, or American capitalism, they are patently un-Islamic. These systems may succeed in putting off their doom for some time, but they are bound ultimately to go. The conscience of humanity cannot be cheated indefinitely. The future of the world is inseparably linked with the social justice of Islam. Revival of the Islam world 191. Industrial and military self-sufficiency. If the Muslim world really wants to rise up and make Islam once again the instrument of realizing human destiny, it can no longer afford to ignore its educational, scientific, and industrial development and the organization of its military strength. It must quickly make itself independent of the West and attain a position wherein it can use its natural resources, manufacture its weapons and feed and clothe its people without having to look to others for assistance. It must build up its economic and military strength so that it does not have to rely on another power for security and protection. As long as Muslim countries depend on the West for economic and military aid, the West will continue to keep them weak and disorganized. In the past, Muslims were neglectful of their duty to themselves and to the rest of the world, and they were condemned to a long period of servitude and misery. The rule of the West was imposed upon them, which proved to be the starting point of the degeneracy of man in modern times. If Muslims do not pay immediate attention to their intellectual and economic rebirth, the period of their mfring will be extended and the world will be damned indefinitely. Educational reorganization. The educational setup of the Islamic world will have to be thoroughly overhauled in the light of Islamic ideals and precepts. To learn from Western countries which are scientifically and technologically advanced is one thing, but the moment JV1 Muslims forget that their roots are in Islam, and become the intellectual followers of others, their creative energies will be dampened. In foreign 1er times, the intellectual leadership of the Muslims was accepted all over the world. Their culture and learning could be observed in every sphere of human life all over the globe. For a long time the world continued to think in the Islamic way and draw inspiration from Islamic life. Arabic was the vehicle of learning in the Western world, and every writer of note used this language to express himself. Sometimes an original book was brought out in Arabic and a summary of it was produced in another language, such as Mam al-Ghazali's Kayfiyat Isa'at. Though the educational 192 Islam and the world system introduced by the Abbasids was more Greek and Iranian in its essence than Islamic, and had a number of defects from the academic point of view, it gained currency almost everywhere. But times changed, and Western rule began. This brought with it a new attitude towards learning, which was the product of Europe's own cultural experiences and needs. The world began to follow the new structure blindly. Muslim countries, too, on account of their intellectual sluggishness, succumbed to the illusion that their salvation lay only in slavish submission to the West and to its educational system. The ground was thus prepared for not merely intellectual adoration but also for imitation of Western civilization by the Muslim intelligentsia. Religious scepticism, conceit, discontent and other characteristics of the modern WCSTCRN mode of living began steadily to replace the cultural ideals of the rising generations of Muslim 1M. The spiritual civilization of Islam began systematically to be replaced by the material culture of Europe. For the regaining of world leadership for Islam, it is vital that Muslims should re-establish their intellectual superiority over the West. For this the Islamic culture will have to reassert itself. Crusading endeavors will have to be made in all branches of learning. This, obviously, cannot be achieved by a few individuals or associations. Muslim states should take the task of intellectual regeneration seriously. 111 hand. High-powered committees and institutions should immediately be set up for the purpose of evolving an educational structure that fully conforms to the spirit of the Quran and the Sunnah without overlooking the requirements of modern Qanwaning and scientific research. Muslim educationists and scientists should apply their own speculative reasoning to the empirical sciences so that they can save the coming generations of Muslims from developing a feeling of contempt for their own past and a despair for their future. This is how an Islamic revival can be brought about. This is the way in which Muslims can spread the light of Islam to faraway lands and save mankind from the stark ruin that is staring it in the face. Such leadership will not be easy. It will call for tremendous faith, labor, and sacrifice.